Hi there. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about Turo. I want to detail my Turo journey. I'm right at 1 month into the process of getting a Turo business off the ground. Let me just tell you how I found out about Turo. Now, I first heard about Turo about 2 years ago when some people that I was networking with mentioned that they needed to go on a trip, were unable to get a Hertz or Avis or Enterprise rental car, and they'd heard about Turo and they were looking into Turo. They were going to actually be up in like North Dakota or Idaho somewhere, and no cars were available, and they were flying up there. This was kind of soon after the pandemic started, and some guy had like a 2010 Suzuki Outlander, Outback, or whatever, and the car was going for $150 a day, and they were pretty amazed. And so that was when I first heard about Turo. Well, I never really thought that much about it until about a month ago. I met a guy named Barron, and Barron was telling me about his Turo business. So sometimes I drive for Uber, kill a few hours of time, and make a few bucks as opposed to watching Netflix. And I'd probably drive for 10 or 20 hours a week on Uber. And so I picked up this guy named Barron, and he had just dropped off a car. And I was asking him, like I normally do when I drive for Uber, I like to learn about the people. And I said, I asked him what he was doing, what kind of business he's in. He said he just dropped off a BMW 6 Series car for somebody to rent. And I said, really, tell me about what you're doing. And so he told me about his Turo business. Now, I'm recording this in the last couple of days of November. I think it's November 27th right now of 2020. Barron just started his Turo business in August of this year, 2022. Now, Barron decided to go out and buy 4 or 5 different cars. He got a Porsche Panamera, a Corvette, I don't remember the years on these, a BMW 6 Series, and he had also a fairly recent model Cadillac Escalade. And so these were the vehicles that he was renting out. He had another one, I can't remember what it was, but it was out on loan. But I saw the Panamera, and when I dropped him off, I took a few minutes and looked at his Panamera and his Corvette and his Escalade, and I was pretty impressed. The guy went out and bought basically new or late model cars, and they had note payments on them. And the general thing that he told me, which really captured my interest, was that he was paying about $1,200 to $1,500 a month on each one of these cars, but that each one of the cars is making $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Well, we also talked a little bit, and he explained that he decided to get into the higher end luxury market segment on Turo because one of the things you have to do on Turo is you have to clean the cars. And he said, I asked him, who cleans your cars? And he goes, I do. And I said, well, how much time does that take? Not a whole lot of time, but you have to disinfect and clean the cars. And he said, if I'm going to do that, I want to make some serious money, some reasonable money. I don't want to do low-end cars. And I also thought that was pretty interesting statement, that he'd rather do the work that he does for a higher daily rate. And I asked him what kind of, how many days a month are the cars rented? And he said, it picked up over the last 5 or 6 months, because so August, September, October, November. So he's only been doing it for, about 4, maybe 5 months now. And he said it picked up over time. And now, I didn't ask him this question at the point in time that I met him, but I called him back because he gave me his information, and called him back and asked him a question. But this is an important question that you have to ask, and that is, well, how many days a month do you rent your cars on average? Well, about a week ago, now I met him about 4 weeks ago, and so about a week ago I called him up and was describing to him my progress towards getting a Turo business started. And I asked him that question. He says he rents his cars on average 18 to 20 days per month as of this point in time. So again, 4, maybe 5 months into his Turo business, he's keeping his cars rented anywhere between 18 and 20 days per month on average now. Well, there's not a whole lot of months to average over, but that's like kind of the recent month's average. Well, his cars rent for 150 to 180, $200 a day. And one of his strategies to get the cars, keep the cars rented frequently, is to keep the price a little bit lower. And of course that makes sense. I mean, if you have two Porsche Panameras out there that look essentially the same and are basically the same model, same car, you're going to have a tendency to want to rent the one that's going to cost you a little bit less. And that's just the nature of the game. So it's not an uncommon strategy, but it's the strategy that he uses. So with the idea in my mind that he had planted, I began going, first place I went was to YouTube, because I figure everything in the world, there's somebody on YouTube that's already done it. If it's a business idea, let's go find out what they think. And so I started watching videos on YouTube. And there's a lot of different people, Stephen Marquardt and Aubrey Jenkins, and there's a whole bunch of other people out there that have YouTube videos about how to run a Turo business. And I got to tell you, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos. And so probably a big part of the first week of my Turo journey was spent watching videos. And I don't know, I'm going to say I probably spent 20 hours watching videos, every kind of video I could from a whole bunch of different people. But I also interspersed additional time in beginning the process of looking for cars. And I also spent a lot of time on Turo and on cars.com and carguru.com and cartrader.com and or autotrader.com and just a variety of different places looking for cars, and then kind of comparing the car that I could find for a price, and then looking at Turo to try to figure out what the rental volume would be. Now, Turo provides a variety of interesting tools that you can use, and you can go in and analyze data. Now, they don't give you any data analytics tools, which is, in my opinion, I don't know for sure if I would like that idea or not, because quite honestly, the single most important thing I would like to know is which cars are rented most frequently. And so, I mean, is the car that's rented most frequently like 25, 30 days a month on average? Is it a Toyota Camry? Is it a Hyundai, Elantra? Is it a Mazda 3? I mean, what is the kind of car that has the most demand in terms of the number of days of rentals? And at what price? Well, Turo doesn't give you that information. They don't give that information to you as an account owner, as a host. They don't give you that information as a guest. And there's not any way that I have yet found to be able to get that information, which is the information I'd really like. Because if I found that a particular car was rented more often at a higher price, then I could go buy a car like that, put it in the mix and compete and get a better return on investment. But they don't give you that data, and I don't know of any way yet to be able to find that data. In fact, there are certain things about getting a Turo car business off the ground that I've just kind of figured out. You just kind of have to jump in at some point and do it. So I spent the majority of the first week watching videos, and one of the videos that I came across was Aubrey Janik talking about how she uses the Facebook Marketplace as a tool and to find deals. And so I started spending more time. I shifted my attention over to Facebook. Now, I'm somebody that doesn't use Facebook a whole lot, but I do, like almost everybody, have a Facebook account. So I went into Facebook Marketplace and began doing searches, looking for cars. And there's a whole variety of filters that you can use to try to find cars in different price ranges. And I did my first sort of analysis. I mean, I'd love to be able to just go out and buy a half dozen, Porsche Panameras and BMW 3s and all that kind of stuff, either brand new or late model. But I don't have that much capital, and I don't want to tie up that much credit until I've had a chance to get a feel for how this business really works. So I decided that, contrary to what Barron's argument was, that he wanted to do high-end cars so that he wasn't cleaning cars for just low-dollar amounts, I decided that I wanted a less financially risky sort of investment. And a lot of people in the Turo business will tell you that the cars that are less expensive, like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 cars, are the cars that are going to give you the best return on investment. So I started out with about $15,000 in capital to be able to buy a couple of cars, two, maybe three, I wasn't sure. Ended up being about two cars, ended up being two cars. And the process about finding the cars, I got to tell you, it was really kind of scary. It's scary because one of the things you want to make sure that you do is that you buy a car that you can later sell. First of all, you want a car. Here are Turo's requirements. The car has to be less than 12 years old, and it has to have less than 130,000 miles on it at the time that you list it on Turo. Now, one of the things I could not easily find is what happens if the car ages out. So right now it's 2022. 12-year-old car is a 2010. I guess theoretically I could buy a 2010 vehicle with under 130,000 miles and put it on Turo. But I went through and couldn't find anywhere where Turo explicitly stated that if you already have a car that's, say, right at 12 years old, when the next calendar year rolls forward and it becomes 2023, will they kick a 2010 car off now that it's 13 years old? Well, during the Turo onboarding process, I asked that question, and the answer that I was given was that once a car is on the platform, as long as it's well maintained, they will not kick the car off the platform. So that means that if you listed a 12-year-old car and it had under 130,000 miles, that when that car became older than 12 years and when it had more than 130,000 miles, either one of those things, they would not remove the car or disqualify the car from being rented because it was older and had more miles. The caveat, of course, is that it has to be well maintained. Now, if you've got an old car and you're renting it out and that car starts breaking down on people, and then, of course, the guests start complaining to Turo, chances are pretty good they're going to take a quick look and go, you know what, it's breaking down, it's an old car, it's got a lot of miles, you got to take it off the platform. But as long as it's not breaking down, I suspect that you'd be okay, though, again, I didn't quite ask the question when I was being onboarded that way. I just asked if the car is older, if it ages out, will you cause it to be removed? And they said as long as it's in good condition, we don't require delisting just because it's older than 12, but you can't put an older than 12 on. So anyway, that was information that it took me a while to figure out. So I went through the process of looking for cars, and it took me 2 weeks in looking at least a dozen vehicles before I began to feel confident in my ability to make a judgment as to whether or not a car was a good car. Now, when I was much younger, I worked as a car sales guy for a dealership, actually several dealerships, a used car dealership and a Porsche Audi dealership. And I was pretty successful as a sales guy, but that was 40 or 50 years ago, and at least 40 years ago. And honestly, I don't really remember a whole lot of what I had in the way of car, juice, if you will, back then. So I'm pretty leery about making a bad decision. And so I tried to be real careful. When you use Facebook Marketplace to try to find a car, the prices tend to be better than you're going to find on cars.com or one of the, the big car listing websites. And you're not going to be dealing with a dealership. Well, let me rephrase that. There's a whole bunch of dealerships that will essentially lie to Facebook and say that the car is a private owner car. They'll get somebody at the dealership to list the car as if they're the owner. So most of the cars, even if you check the box or the radio button that says, I only want private owners, probably 80% of the cars on Facebook are still going to end up being dealership cars. And so when you're looking at the cars on Facebook, it's really kind of hard to find the ones that are actually owned by private individuals. And even some of those private individuals are kind of like dealers that are becoming dealers off the book. So I looked at probably over 2 weeks about a dozen cars, and for one reason or another, disliked all of them. And I finally found a Mitsubishi Mirage. Now, I went and drove about three different Mitsubishi Mirages, and I'm a big SUV guy, and I'm getting into these little tiny three-cylinder engine cars and driving them, trying to figure out, what's attractive about them, and are they good cars? The thing about the Mitsubishi Mirage is it's probably the least expensive car on the market. It is a three-cylinder engine. It's about 78, depending upon the year model, 78 horsepower. The car is inexpensive, so not only can you buy one new inexpensive, as they get older, they also are inexpensive. So, I tried to find cars that were between $5,000 and $6,000 that I could buy. My plan was to just pay for two of them cash outright, not have any kind of note finance on them. That way, if they didn't rent, I wouldn't have a monthly payment that I had to worry about. And so the first one I found was a Mitsubishi Mirage. Now, as it turns out, this car, the person that owned it was asking $6,200. I negotiated, not that I got that great a deal, down to $5,800. Bought the car, and then I started discovering things that I probably should have thought about. The car only had one key. Well, Mitsubishi Mirage keys, if you get them made at the dealership, those things are pretty expensive, like $360 plus programming. Now, as it turns out, you can go on to Google and do a search for a programmable Mitsubishi Mirage key and end up buying the key that can be programmed for about $40-50. And then you have to get a locksmith to cut the key, make a duplicate of it, and then you can program the key to the car. It's not really hard. You don't need a dealer to do that. Dealers would gladly charge you $500 or $600 to simply sell you a key, cut the key, and program the key to the car. So now begins the journey of figuring out more cost-effective ways to do things than going through dealers. So I've ordered the keys. I haven't yet received a duplicate key. One of the things I feel is important is you don't want to put a car out on rent on Turo without having a key, so that if something happens and you have to go get the car, you actually have a key that you can get into the car and retrieve it. Now, I certainly don't look forward to having to go get a car from somebody that's kept the car and isn't paying for it. That's a whole nother sort of conversation, if you will, but I don't feel comfortable renting a car out and having the only key to that car, potentially being lost or stolen by the person that rents the car. Who knows what could happen? I mean, keys get lost all the time. So I now have to replace the key on that car. If I'd thought about it at the time, I probably would have negotiated at least a couple $100 additional dollars off on that car because it only had one key. So anyway, that was a mistake that I made. I also made a mistake of not really carefully considering what the Kelley Blue Book value on the car is, because I probably have paid at least $500, maybe $1,000 or more over what the real value of the car is. Now, here we are, November of 2022, and the used car market is actually shifting right as we talk, and it's beginning to become more of a buyer's market than it has been for the last couple of years. So the pandemic caused a lot of things with cars to happen, and one of the things that caused to happen was a shortage of new cars and jacked up the prices on used cars to outrageous amounts. And we're still kind of in the tail end of that before the market has adjusted back to normalcy. So, I wanted to get started in the business, and I didn't want to just wait. So I wanted to go ahead and get a car and get the process going so that I had some real genuine experience, especially as it relates to how many days is a car actually rented at what price. So, that one big question of how many days a month is a car reasonably expected to be rented. You can look at the number of trips, but that doesn't tell you how many days of rental income that car has generated. So you're not going to really know those things with great detail and great confidence until you get into the game. So anyway, I bought this 2015 Mitsubishi Mirage with 118,000 miles, paid $5,800 for it. And based upon my analysis at the time, that car should be able to be rented for roughly $30 a day. Okay, now $30 a day. What am I gonna get out of that? Well, it depends upon the protection plan. So I've just decided to do the 75% protection plan, which means that I get 75% of the daily rental. So 30 bucks a day, 75%, $22.50. So I'm going to get $22.50 per day. So when you list the car on Turo, they give you an upper lower price range. I set that price range at, I think, $22 on the low end and $35 on the high end. And Turo put the car out there. Then I put some 3-day discounts, 7-day discounts, and month-long discounts. And my first rental, now my car actually got on to Turo the day before Thanksgiving. And about 12 hours later, maybe whatever, Thanksgiving morning, the next day, I got a rental request on it, which I was super excited about, of course. The rental request was for somebody that wanted to rent the car for 14 days from the 6th of December through the 20th of December, and I'm going to make $230. Well, the $230 actually comes out to less than I expected, but I'm happy. And the reason I'm happy is for multiple reasons. Number one, 14 days, $230. Let me just do the math real quick for you on my calculator. So 230 divided by 14 equals $16.57 per day. If I were able to get that car to be an extended rental for 30 days, multiply that times 30, and that's $497. Okay, so I'm going to potentially earn right at $500 a month for this car that cost me $5,800, which means that in about 11 months, I'm going to have covered the cost of that car, but not, of course, the cost of ongoing maintenance during the next 11 months. So just in terms of return on investment on the car, getting that car paid for in 10 or 11 months, to me is a reasonable return in this market at this point in time. Now, I'm obviously going to have to clean the car, and I'm going to have to change the oil on the car. But it's got good tires on it, and it's got good brakes on it. So other than oil and, keeping the car clean, unless there's a problem with the car that is unexpected, I should be able to rent this car out for around 10 months and get a return of my cash. Now, the car should still end up having some value at the end of 10 months. The car has 118,000 miles on it. I don't know how it'll perform long term. I don't know how many miles people drive a car like this. I've given them the unlimited miles option at present. The person that's renting the car says they're going to be just using it to go to and from work. But once they have the car and unlimited miles, I mean, I can't. They could drive down to Houston and then up to Oklahoma City and back every day, and I can't do anything about it other than refuse to let them to rent the car to renew or extend their rental. But again, at this point in time, if I can earn $500 a month on a car that I paid $5,800 for and get a return of investment in 11 or 12 months, I think that's acceptable for the first vehicle. Now, again, we'll see how it lasts. The second vehicle that I purchased, I bought from a guy that ended up being kind of a used car dealer. Now, I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he drives up to Oklahoma to buy cars because he likes to buy cars from people out of the big cities. And so he bought a car that I bought from him, and he just had a title and a lien release and a bill of sale that he gave to me that the seller had signed over. Now, the car that I got from him was a 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and it had also about 118,000 miles on it. Now, this car was a real clean, real pretty little car, but there was a couple of things about it that I really didn't fully realize. Number one, there was a depression in the hood where somebody looked like they had pressed their hand into it, and so it was a bowed-in dent on the hood. Well, I'm not a car repair guy, but I looked at that dent and I could see there weren't any creases. And I said to myself, I can probably just get some suction cups and pop that baby back out. And so I've bought some suction cups on Amazon that'll be here in a couple of days. They're $20 for a 3-cup set, and I should be able to just put those on, pop it out, and while it may not be perfect, it's going to look much nicer, and it won't look like somebody pushed a dent in. Other than that, the body looks to be in great shape. And the interior is great. The carpets are great. The car drives exceedingly well with one little exception. When you turn the wheel kind of pops at slow speeds, and that's because it's got a electromechanical power steering assist. And there's some sort of little rubberized coupling in there that's broken. Well, I've decided to get that fixed. I thought I could drive. Actually, I know I could have leased this car. Could have put this car on Turo and left it that way, but people would probably drive it, and even though it would drive fine, they'd be like, that's a little funky. I mean, is there something wrong with this car? So the guy was asking $5,900. I paid $5,500 for the car, but I'm going to have to spend about $350 getting that fixed. I took it into a dealer because there were a couple of recall issues, and when I tried to list the car on Turo, of course, you put the VIN number in, and it wouldn't let me list the car because there were some recalls, or there was one recall. So I took it to the dealer. The dealer's going to fix the recall related to the brake pedal, and then they found another recall that Turo hadn't found. So they fixed 2 different recall issues for me at the dealership, and I also had them go ahead and perform a rear brake repair. And also fix that car steering thing. And so my total investment is going to end up being right at $600 in that car. So $5,500 plus $6,100. And I don't yet have the car on Turo because even though, I've tried to list it, but they've suspended the listing until they get updated. The NTHSA database gets updated that the car has actually been had the recall item has been fixed on that car. Now they said Turo said that could take up to 30 days. The car dealership said that it should only take 2 or 3 days for the NTHSA to be updated because they put it into the system immediately. I don't know how often Turo pulls that information and how fast their process is. I'm certainly going to be on the phone to them on Monday or Tuesday as soon as the updates are done to see if I can't shorten that 30-day time down to immediate, because I'd like to have that car trying to rent some money. Now this is, even though it's a little older car, it's a 4-cylinder, it's an Elantra, it's a really beautiful car. And presuming that I can get it rented out for a little bit more than the than the Mitsubishi Mirage, I should probably be able to get that car rented out for net to me more in the range, even for an extended driving, time frame. I should be able to net more in the range of $20 to $22 a day. So $22 a day, 30 days, $660. I figure I can make at least $600 a month on that car on an on an ongoing basis. But I'm trying to price the cars so that they are attractive to people that need a daily driver. For some reason, they can't buy a car. They don't have an option. They need a daily driver. They're going to want to have a car that's reliable, that they can drive to and from work for long term without spending a whole lot of money. And so the idea being is if I don't have to clean the car every few days because they just rent it on the weekends, then I have much more of a residual income, a passive income type of business, as opposed to one where I'm, constantly shuffling cars back and forth and doing all the cleaning and, that just takes a lot of time. So my business strategy at present is to focus on the inexpensive low-income end of the market, try to attract long-term renters, and then keep the cars out for extended periods of time so that it becomes more of a passive income business than an actively involved income business. So interestingly enough, the first car, the Mitsubishi Mirage, of course, I tried to list it immediately after getting it and found out literally that day that the car had already been listed on Turo. And so I had to call the person I bought it up from and get them to take it off of Turo, which fortunately they did, but they weren't real communicative. And so I tried to find out, did the car not work for you? Did you have a problem with it? I mean, I already own the car, so I can't give it back to you. Just talk to me. And they didn't really want to talk to me. So I'm a little bit nervous about that car because they didn't really want to talk to me. So, and then since that point in time, I've done more research on the Mitsubishi Mirage, and it seems like the 2015 year model may end up having some issues. The cars are apparently known when they reach about 150,000 miles for having some issues. So it might be that I end up selling that car and recouping hopefully most of my money. But at least I'm now able to start getting some data on the idea of a business model that has an inexpensive car out on rent for extended periods of time. And so we'll find out how that goes. So this coming week, I have a number of things that I'm expecting to do. So I'll be getting the Elantra back from the dealership. I will be putting it on Turo and trying to get it passed through the open recall issue with the NTHSA connection to Turo, so they'll let me get the car listed. Now, next thing I want to talk about is insurance. Insurance is kind of an interesting situation. Obviously, you don't want to drive a car without insurance, but Turo, once a guest is in the car, Turo pretty much handles the insurance. Okay, so the way it basically works is the guest is responsible for covering the car. Now, the guest should have insurance, and Turo is screening guests to make sure that they're reputable. But to my knowledge, Turo doesn't actually check the insurance sort of status and coverage limits of a guest. It's up to the guest to be financially responsible for the car they drive. And that's Texas law, that's most state laws. So almost certainly the guest will have some sort of insurance. But the level of coverage and the degree of difficulty, if there's an accident, of getting compensation from the guest is an unknown. So I've asked a lot of people, how do you get insurance? What kind of insurance should you have? And they kept referring me to a company called Lula. And I'm showing this on screen right now. Lula is lularentals.com, and they have fleet programs. And so you're going to want to go to lularentals.com and get in touch with them. They have ways to fill out applications online. And certainly Lula is, I think, going to be pretty good. Now, Lula is the kind of insurance that you get to cover the car, but only during the time when it's between guest rentals. So once a guest picks up the car, their insurance and Turo's insurance protection covers you. But once the car is returned, then you have to have coverage when you're driving it back to your storage lot or your house, or you're taking it out for repairs or maintenance or what have you. And so Lula is the place to go. Lula has two types of insurance. One is sort of the standard program, and the other is the commercial lease program. The standard program is $99 per car per month, and you have to have at least two cars, and you have to have an LLC or a business like a corporate entity set up. They will not provide insurance to individuals. So if you have not already gotten an LLC or a corporation set up, you're going to have one before you're going to be able to get Lula to provide coverage on vehicles. If you only have one vehicle, Lula won't cover it. So you're going to need either two vehicles, or you're going to get Lula, or you're going to need to have your personal insurance carrier provide you with insurance. One of the challenges with a personal carrier providing insurance is they're going to pay, one of the challenges with, your personal insurance carrier covering it is they don't understand the Turo model, and they're not willing to provide any kind of specialized insurance. So you're going to be paying full normal auto insurance rates on a vehicle that you only need insurance to and from, the pickup or drop-off points and or maintenance related destinations. And bottom line is you're going to be paying $300 or $400 or whatever per month for insurance when you don't need to. So Lula charges $99 per vehicle per month, 2-vehicle minimum. You must be a business entity, otherwise they won't provide the insurance. So your vehicle is going to need to be in the business entity name, and so that's kind of how that's going to work. Now, Lula provides a second type of insurance, which is $149 a month, and it actually covers you if you do direct leasing. In other words, in addition to your Turo business where you rent cars out through Turo, you could, and Turo doesn't mind this, you could do your own direct auto leasing of these vehicles. You just, of course, have to take them off Turo or block them out when you lease them. Now, I'm not interested in getting into that business yet, so I'm not going to choose that insurance. But the point is that Lula does offer an insurance option for auto rental companies. If you're wanting to use something other than Turo, if you want to rent cars directly to people and not do it through Turo, do it through your LLC or through your corporation, set it up as an auto rental company, get your own contracts and do all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff, Lula still has a program for you. And then, so anyway, I'm now also in the process of getting my LLC set up. Corporations in the state of Texas can be done overnight, but I didn't realize LLCs take a little longer. And so I didn't start this process until about a week and a half ago. This should be concluded either Monday or Tuesday of this next week, certainly before the end of December or before the end of November. And then I'll get the cars transferred into the LLC's name, and then I'll contact Lula and get the insurance coverage started, and that'll be done. Now, also, I've been doing research. I'm going to choose to put an electronic tracking device in both cars. And interestingly enough, I don't have those yet. Interestingly enough, CarSync, which now I'm showing you on screen here, CarSync is an incredible tool that helps you to automate the process of communicating with your guests, as well as billing your guests for things like toll charges. So I'm getting toll tags put on the cars so that I can automate that process for the convenience of guests. But of course, they get charged. Well, the question becomes, well, how do you charge them? Well, CarSync takes care of that. CarSync allows you to synchronize your cars to the North Texas Toll Authority, the NTTA, and at the end of a trip, you're going to be able to go in and grab for that trip all the tolls, and then you're going to use this tool to charge the guest via Turo. So their CarSync is connected up with Turo, so you can use this tool to charge the guest for their tolls. That and I think also mileage overages, though I'm not 100% certain on that yet. So this is a really powerful tool, and you're going to want to get this tool, but you can't turn CarSync on until you have a Turo account. They won't let you create a CarSync account until you have a Turo account. So one of the very first things when you create an account they're going to do is ask you, what platform like Turo or other platforms that are out there that you might be wanting to synchronize up with. And if you don't have a platform because you don't have an account and you don't have a vehicle, then so you've got to wait until your car is on Turo and listed. You have an account on Turo, you have a car on Turo before you can connect CarSync up, and then this stuff will start working. But CarSync is really a cool tool. It's definitely going to save you a lot of time. I'll do a video about this at a later point in time. But here's the long and the short of my first 30 days of Turo business experience. 2 weeks of research, 1 week of finding cars, 1 week of getting cars fixed. During that time frame, I'm setting up the LLC and coordinating in the next few days the addition of a second vehicle onto Turo to be able to get it rented. I've already, literally within 24 hours of listing my first vehicle, I got a 14-day rental, and that'll start on December 6th. So by the time I get to the end of December, At this point in time, barring unforeseen things like cancellations by a guest, I should have made at least $230 in cash flow positive. Well, let me rephrase that. Revenue of $230, not including the expenses that I've incurred for cars and for maintenance and for lock boxes and things like that. So this has been a really long-winded introduction to my Turo journey, and I hope that you find it interesting. I will be doing another one in about another week to give you an update on how the process or the progress with the Elantra is coming. And then my plan is, after about a month, is to try to start buying about a car a month, pay cash for them, and put them up on Turo, though I am open to the idea of buying cars and covering my monthly rent. But as of yet, I don't have a solid confidence in Turo's ability to generate revenues to make it worthwhile to do that. So hopefully this is something that will help answer a few questions, or at least documenting my journey as a brand new Turo host. So thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.